Welcome. You made it back to the second part of this amazing story. If you missed the part 1, the link is in the description of this video. Go watch it now. Let's begin. My name is Alexei Volkov. Victor Salazar works for me. Worked for me, I should say, past tense. He's currently indisposed for overstepping his authority. Where is he? Dead, Alexei said casually. He kidnapped this girl without permission, tried to start a war with you without authorization from the council. Sloppy business. Bad for everyone. Then let her go, Matteo said. In a moment. First, we talk. Alexei pulled out a cigarette, lighting it slowly. You've built quite the empire here, Luis. Impressive for someone so young. But you've been operating independently for too long. The old families, we're consolidating. Forming alliances. I'm here to offer you a place at the table. Not interested, Matteo said flatly. I thought you'd say that. Which is why I brought insurance. Alexei gestured, and more men appeared from the shadows, at least 20 of them, all armed. Work with us, and the girl goes free. Refuse, and well, accidents happen. Sandra felt her world tilting. They were outnumbered, outgunned. Even Matteo couldn't fight his way out of this. There's a third option, Matteo said calmly. Oh. Trial by combat. Old rules. You and me, one-on-one. I win, Elena goes free and you leave my territory forever. You win, I'll consider your proposal. Alexei laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You want to fight me personally? Do you know who I am? A dead man if you accept, Matteo said. The Russian's smile faded. Around them, his men shifted uncertainly. Sandra realized what Matteo was doing, invoking the old cartel laws that even someone like Volkov couldn't refuse without losing face in front of his own people. Very well, Alexei said finally. Tomorrow night. The old Veracruz shipyard. Neutral ground. Just you and me. Done, Matteo said. And the girl comes with me now as good faith. Alexei considered, then nodded. Cut her loose. One of his men moved forward, cutting through Elena's bindings. She stumbled, and Sandra broke free from the twins, running to catch her sister as she collapsed. I've got you, Sandra whispered, holding Elena tight. I've got you. Matteo kept his weapon trained on Alexei as they backed toward the exit, his men providing cover. Only when they were outside and in the vehicles did Sandra let herself breathe. Elena was shaking uncontrollably, her face pressed against Sandra's shoulder. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Sure, none of this is your fault, Sandra murmured, stroking her sister's hair. You're safe now. You're safe. But even as she said it, Sandra's eyes found Matteo's in the rearview mirror. Tomorrow night, he would face Alexei Volkov in single combat. A man who'd killed Victor Salazar like it was nothing. A man who commanded armies. And if Matteo lost, everything would be lost. Back at the penthouse, Sandra got Elena settled in the guest room with a doctor Matteo called in to check her over. Bruised ribs, minor cuts and contusions, but nothing permanently damaged. Elena fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted and traumatized but alive. Sandra found Matteo in his office, staring out at the city lights with a drink in his hand. You can't do this, she said without preamble. You can't fight him. There has to be another way. There isn't, Matteo said without turning around. Volkov played this perfectly. If I refuse the challenge, I look weak. Every rival I've ever had will come for me. But if I fight him, you could die, Sandra finished, her voice breaking. I could, he agreed. But I won't. I've trained in combat my entire life, Sandra. My father made sure of it. Old school, traditional methods. I can beat him. You don't know that. Finally, Matteo turned to face her. I know that if I don't try, Elena becomes leverage forever. They'll use her against you, and they'll use you against me. This is the only way to end it cleanly. Sandra crossed the room in 3 quick steps, grabbing the front of his shirt. I just got you. I just found out that you feel the same way I do. You can't ask me to watch you die. Matteo set down his drink and pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. Then don't watch. Stay here with Elena. Let me handle this. No, Sandra said fiercely. If you're doing this, I'm there. I'm not hiding while you risk everything. Sandra. I mean it, Matteo. You don't get to protect me from this. We're in it together now. He stared down at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Together, he agreed. They stayed like that for a while, holding each other in the dim office, neither wanting to acknowledge that tomorrow might tear them apart before they'd barely begun. The next day passed too quickly. Matteo spent the morning training, working through combat forms in his private gym while Sandra watched from the sidelines. She'd never seen him like this, moving with lethal grace, each strike powerful enough to break bone. It should have been terrifying. Instead, she found herself mesmerized. He's going to win, Carlos said quietly beside her. I've seen Matteo fight. Volkov doesn't stand a chance. You have to say that, Sandra replied. You work for him. I say it because it's true. Boss has been preparing for something like this his whole life. His father was brutal about combat training. Made him fight grown men when he was 14. He knows how to survive. Sandra wanted to believe him. She had to believe him. That evening, Elena was well enough to sit up and eat something solid. Sandra spent time with her, explaining everything that had happened, holding her sister as fresh tears fell. He's doing this because of me, Elena whispered. If something happens to him. Nothing's going to happen, Sandra said firmly. Matteo knows what he's doing. And then this will be over. You'll be safe. What about you? Elena asked, studying Sandra's face. You love him. It wasn't a question. Sandra thought about denying it, then realized there was no point. Yes, she said simply. I love him. Then he'll win, Elena said with the certainty of youth. Love makes people stronger, right? That's what you always told me after Mom and Dad died. Sandra hugged her sister tighter, wishing she had that kind of faith. When night fell, they drove in convoy to the old Veracruz shipyard, a massive industrial complex that had been abandoned for years. It was technically neutral territory, belonging to no cartel, perfect for something like this. Massive floodlights had been set up in the center of the yard, illuminating a circular space about 30 feet across. Both sides had brought their people, forming a ring around the combat zone. Sandra counted at least 50 of Volkov's men, all heavily armed. Alexei was already there, stripped down to a black shirt and tactical pants. He was bigger than Matteo, broader through the shoulders, and when he moved, it was with the efficiency of someone who'd killed many times before. Luis, he called out. Ready to die. Ready to dance, Matteo replied, pulling off his jacket and handing it to Carlos. Sandra grabbed his arm before he could step into the circle. Promise me you'll come back. Matteo turned, cupping her face in both hands. I promise, he said, then kissed her hard and fierce, pouring everything into it. When he pulled back, his eyes were blazing. I've got too much to live for now. Then he stepped into the light, and the fight began. They circled each other warily, both fighters clearly experienced. Alexei struck first, a heavy punch that Matteo barely dodged. The Russian was fast for his size, and every blow he threw had knockout power behind it. Matteo fought differently, using speed and precision, landing quick strikes to vulnerable points. Within the first minute, both men were breathing hard. You're good, Alexei admitted, wiping blood from his split lip. Better than I expected. You haven't seen anything yet, Matteo replied. The next exchange was brutal. Alexei got inside Matteo's guard, landing a crushing body blow that made Sandra gasp. But Matteo used the momentum to spin, his elbow catching Alexei in the temple hard enough to stagger him. Back and forth they went, neither giving quarter. Matteo's face was swelling, blood running from his nose. Alexei was limping, one of his ribs clearly cracked. But neither would go down. Stay down, Sandra found herself whispering, though she didn't know which man she was talking to. Please just stay down. Then everything changed. Alexei pulled a knife from his boot, a clear violation of the rules. Several of Matteo's men moved forward, but Carlos held them back. Boss's fight, he growled. He'll handle it. Matteo saw the knife and smiled, cold and terrible. You just made a mistake, he said. When Alexei lunged, Matteo didn't retreat. Instead, he moved forward, inside the knife's arc, his hand catching Alexei's wrist. There was a sickening crack as Matteo broke the Russian's arm, the knife clattering to the ground. Then Matteo went to work, every strike measured and devastating. It wasn't anger driving him anymore but cold calculation, breaking down his opponent piece by piece. When Alexei finally fell to his knees, Matteo grabbed him by the hair, forcing the Russian to look up at him. "You come into my city," Matteo said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You threaten people under my protection. You break sacred laws of combat. This is what happens when you disrespect me." He threw Alexei to the ground, the Russian groaning but not getting up. "The fight is over," Matteo announced, turning to address Volkov's men. "Your boss broke the rules. He lost. The deal stands. You leave my territory and never come back. If I see any of you again, I won't be so merciful. Understood?" Silence, then slowly, one by one, Volkov's men nodded. They collected their beaten boss and retreated, disappearing into the night like shadows. The moment they were gone, Sandra ran into the circle, throwing herself at Matteo. He caught her with a grunt of pain but held her tight. "You're okay," she said, her hands roaming over him, checking for serious injuries. "You're okay, you're alive." "I promised," Matteo said, his voice rough. "I always keep my promises." Carlos appeared with the first aid kit, and they patched Matteo up as best they could in the field. He'd need proper medical attention, but nothing was life-threatening. He'd won. Against impossible odds, he'd actually won. The ride back to the penthouse felt surreal. Elena was crying with relief, thanking Matteo over and over until he gently told her it was okay, everything was okay now. Sandra couldn't stop touching him, needing to confirm he was really there, really alive. Once they were back and the doctor had finished examining Matteo properly, confirming that he had bruised ribs, a minor concussion, and various cuts and contusions but nothing permanent, Sandra finally let herself break down. She sat on the bathroom floor while Matteo showered, her face in her hands, sobs shaking her entire body. The water shut off and Matteo appeared, wrapped in a towel, his body a canvas of bruises. He lowered himself carefully to sit beside her, pulling her against his chest. "It's over," he murmured. "It's really over, Sandra. I thought I was going to lose you," she choked out. "I thought. I know. But you didn't. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." They sat like that until Sandra's tears dried up, until she could breathe normally again. Then Matteo helped her up, led her to his bedroom, and they lay down together, still clothed, just holding each other. "When I saw you in that closet," Matteo said quietly in the darkness, "when I saw you crying, something inside me just snapped. I realized I'd been wasting time, playing it safe, keeping distance because I thought that was the right thing to do. But life's too short for that. I was so scared to tell you how I felt," Sandra admitted. "You're Matteo Luis. You could have anyone. We need to work on your self-esteem," he said with a soft laugh that turned into a wince. "Sandra, you're brilliant and kind and strong. You've kept my entire operation running smoothly for 2 years. You're the first person I think about in the morning and the last one at night. The idea that you thought you weren't enough for me is insane." Sandra tilted her head up to look at him. "So what happens now?" "Now," Matteo said, his hand tracing patterns on her back, "you and Elena stay here as long as you need. We make sure she's completely recovered, get her back to school, make sure she has proper security. And you and I figure out what this is between us. Take our time. Do it right." "I'd like that," Sandra whispered. "Good. Because I'm planning to keep you around for a very long time." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the worst behind them and a future stretching out ahead. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to a new normal. Elena recovered physically and started therapy to deal with the trauma. She moved into the penthouse guest room permanently, Matteo insisting she needed the security, and Sandra couldn't argue. Her baby sister was safe and healthy and even laughing again, which felt like a miracle. Sandra and Matteo navigated their new relationship carefully. He courted her properly, taking her to dinners and shows, learning everything about her he didn't already know. They kept it quiet at first, not wanting to complicate the office dynamics, but eventually, word spread anyway. Carla started calling Sandra boss lady, which made her laugh and Matteo smile, that rare, genuine smile she loved so much. 3 months after the fight at the Veracruz shipyard, Sandra stood in Matteo's office, reviewing the quarterly reports spread across his desk. It was late afternoon, the sun streaming through the windows in golden rays that painted everything warm. She was so focused on the numbers that she didn't hear him come up behind her until his arms wrapped around her waist. "You're supposed to be resting," she scolded gently, leaning back against his chest. "The doctor said light activity only for another week." "This is light activity," Matteo murmured against her neck, pressing a kiss just below her ear. "Besides, I've been stuck in bed for 3 days. I'm going insane." He'd re-injured his ribs during a training session, pushing himself too hard too fast. Sandra had been furious with him, but also terrified, the memory of watching him fight Volkov still too fresh in her mind. "The reports can wait," Matteo said, gently turning her around to face him. "I need to show you something. Matteo. Trust me." He led her to the private elevator, taking them up to the penthouse roof, a space Sandra had never been to before. When the doors opened, she gasped. The entire rooftop had been transformed. String lights created a canopy of stars overhead, and in the center was a table set for 2, covered in white linen with candles flickering in the evening breeze. Roses, deep red and perfect, filled vases scattered around the space. Music played softly from hidden speakers, something classical and romantic. "When did you do all this?" Sandra asked, tears already threatening. "I had help," Matteo admitted. "Carlos is surprisingly good at party planning." "Who knew?" He guided her to the table, pulling out her chair like a perfect gentleman. As she sat, Sandra noticed a small box placed beside her plate, wrapped in silver paper. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it," Matteo said, sitting across from her, his dark eyes intense on her face. With shaking hands, Sandra unwrapped the box. Inside was a key, ornate and beautiful, made of what looked like platinum. "It's the key to the penthouse," Matteo explained. "I had it specially made." "Sandra, I know we've only been officially together for 3 months, but I've known you for 2 years. I've watched you handle crisis after crisis with grace. I've seen you care for your sister with selfless love. I've experienced your kindness, your strength, your brilliance. And I don't want to spend another night without you here, permanently." "You want me to move in?" Sandra whispered. "I want more than that," Matteo said, standing up and moving to her side. He took her hand, pulling her to her feet. "I want mornings where I wake up next to you. I want to come home from difficult meetings and find you waiting. I want to build something real, something lasting. I want." His voice caught, and Sandra saw vulnerability flash across his face, something he rarely showed anyone. "I want you to be mine, completely," he finished. "In every way that matters. I know it's fast. I know we should probably wait longer, be more careful, but Sandra, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You're it for me. You're everything." Sandra felt tears streaming down her cheeks as she threw her arms around his neck, careful not to hurt his still healing ribs. "Yes," she said against his lips. "Yes to all of it. I love you, Matteo Luis. I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good," he murmured, kissing her deeply. "Terror means you're paying attention." They ate dinner under the stars, talking about everything and nothing. Matteo told her stories from his childhood, things he'd never shared before, about growing up in the cartel life, about losing his mother young, about the weight of expectations that had shaped him. Sandra shared her own memories, the grief of losing her parents, the responsibility of raising Elena alone, the loneliness she'd felt before finding him. "When I saw that photo of Elena," Sandra said quietly, "when I realized what was happening, I felt so helpless. I've always taken care of her, protected her, and suddenly I couldn't. The worst moment of my life was thinking I'd failed her." "You didn't fail," Matteo said firmly. "You did exactly what you should have done. You reached out for help. That takes more courage than handling it alone." "I reached out to you," Sandra corrected. "I hid in your closet and fell apart." "Best thing that ever happened to me," Matteo said with a slight smile. "Terrible circumstances, but it broke down all these walls we'd built. Made us honest with each other. Sandra reached across the table, taking his hand. Do you ever regret it? Taking on Volkov, starting that whole mess? Never, Matteo said without hesitation. Not for a second. You and Elena are worth 100 fights. Worth 1,000. The only thing I regret is not telling you how I felt sooner. As the night deepened, they moved to the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the city lights spread below them like a galaxy. Matteo stood behind Sandra, his arms wrapped around her, his chin resting on the top of her head. I never thought I could have this, he said quietly. A normal relationship. Something real. My father always said emotions were weaknesses, that caring about someone gave them power over you. He raised me to be cold, calculating, to never let anyone close. You're not cold, Sandra said, turning in his arms to look up at him. You're the opposite. You feel everything deeply, you just hide it well. Not from you, Matteo said. I can't hide anything from you. You see right through me, Sandra. Always have. Is that why you hired me? She teased gently. Because I saw the real you. I hired you because you were qualified and impressive, Matteo said. I fell for you because during your interview, you disagreed with me about the proposed marketing strategy and had data to back up your position. No one ever disagreed with me. You did it without fear, without hesitation, just stated your case like it was the most natural thing in the world. I was fascinated. Sandra laughed, remembering that interview. I thought I'd blown my chances. You got this look on your face, all intense and serious, and I was sure you were going to throw me out. That look was me trying not to kiss you right there in my office, Matteo admitted. Which would have been wildly inappropriate given you were a job candidate. Probably for the best you restrained yourself, Sandra said, but her smile was warm. Though it would have made for an interesting story. They stayed on the rooftop until midnight, talking and kissing and planning the future. When they finally went back inside, Elena was waiting in the living room, trying and failing to look like she hadn't been anxiously checking the time. So, Elena asked immediately, did you tell her? Did she say yes? Can I see the key? You knew about this? Sandra asked, surprised. Are you kidding? I helped pick out the roses, Elena said, grinning. Carlos wanted orchids, but I said roses were more romantic. Matteo agreed with me. Because you were right, Matteo said, his hand finding Sandra's and squeezing gently. And yes, she said yes. Elena squealed and launched herself at both of them, hugging them fiercely. This is the best news ever. Does this mean we're officially family now? Because I've been telling people at school that my sister is dating a mafia boss and they think I'm making it up. Elena, Sandra started, but Matteo laughed. Let them think what they want, he said. But yes, we're family. All of us. The word settled around them, warm and right. Family. Something all three of them had lost and found again in the most unexpected way. Over the next 2 weeks, Sandra gradually moved her things into the penthouse. It was strange at first, settling into Matteo's space, learning his rhythms and routines. But it also felt natural, like pieces clicking into place. She learned that he was an early riser who liked to work out before dawn. He learned that she needed at least 2 cups of coffee before she could function properly. They learned how to navigate around each other in the bathroom, how to share closet space, all the small intimacies of living together. Elena thrived in the new environment. She was back at nursing school full-time now, with a security detail that she complained about but secretly appreciated. She'd started seeing a therapist regularly, working through the trauma of her kidnapping. Some nights she had nightmares, and Sandra would sit with her until she fell back asleep, but those nights were becoming less frequent. The business side of things was more complicated. Some of Matteo's associates questioned his judgment, suggested he was going soft by bringing his personal life into professional spaces. But Matteo shut down those concerns quickly and decisively. Sandra remained his executive secretary officially, but everyone knew she was much more than that now. She had his ear, his trust, and increasingly, his business partners learned to respect her insight. You're good at this, Carlos told her one afternoon when they were reviewing security protocols. The business side, I mean. You see angles most people miss. I've been paying attention for 2 years, Sandra replied. You pick things up, It's more than that, Carlos said seriously. You understand people. Boss is brilliant with strategy and tactics, but you read emotions, motivations. You're going to be a real asset going forward. Sandra appreciated the vote of confidence, even if the idea of being deeply involved in cartel business still felt surreal sometimes. This wasn't the life she'd imagined for herself. But then again, she'd never imagined finding love with someone like Matteo either, and that had turned out better than any fantasy. 4 months after the rooftop dinner, Matteo came home early from a meeting, his face tight with tension. Sandra knew that expression, had seen it before when something serious was happening. What's wrong? She asked immediately, setting down the reports she'd been reviewing. We have a situation, Matteo said, loosening his tie. Volkov's family wants revenge for his humiliation. They've been building a case with the council, claiming I violated protocol, that the fight wasn't legitimate. Sandra's stomach dropped. Can they do that? They can try. The council is calling a hearing. I have to present my case, defend my actions. Matteo ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. The problem is, Volkov did cheat during the fight. His family is claiming that invalidates the result. But you won anyway, Sandra protested. Even after he pulled the knife. I know. But cartel politics are complicated. If the council rules against me, I could lose standing, territory, maybe worse. He sat down heavily on the couch. I won't let them touch you or Elena, no matter what happens. I've made arrangements. Stop, Sandra said, sitting beside him and taking his face in her hands. We're not running. We're not hiding. If you have to fight this politically, then we fight it together. You taught me that, remember? We're stronger together than apart. Matteo's eyes searched hers. This could get dangerous, Sandra. These aren't street thugs we're dealing with. The Volkov family has resources, connections. They could come after everything I care about to make their point. Then we'll be ready, Sandra said with more confidence than she felt. You've got people who are loyal to you. You've got respect in the community. And you've got me. We'll figure this out. When did you get so fierce? Matteo asked, a slight smile finally breaking through his worried expression. I learned from the best, Sandra replied, kissing him softly. Now tell me everything. What's the timeline? What do we need to prepare? Who's our biggest threat on the council? They spent the next several hours strategizing, planning their approach to the hearing. Carlos joined them, along with Marco and several other trusted lieutenants. By the time midnight rolled around, they had a solid plan. The council hearing was scheduled for 1 week away, giving them time to gather evidence and line up support. Matteo reached out to his allies, calling in favors, reminding people of past assistance. Sandra worked behind the scenes, researching the council members, understanding their interests and vulnerabilities. Viktor Kozlov is the key, she told Matteo 3 days before the hearing. He's the swing vote. The others are already committed one way or another, but Kozlov could go either way. Kozlov doesn't like me, Matteo said. He thinks I'm too young, too reckless. Then we don't appeal to him emotionally, Sandra said, spreading out her research. We appeal to his self-interest. Look at this, his territory borders Volkov family holdings. If they gain more power through this hearing, it weakens his position. We need to make him see that supporting you is supporting himself. Matteo studied her notes, then looked up at her with something like awe. You're brilliant. How did I not see this angle? Because you were too focused on the fight itself, Sandra said. Sometimes it helps to have outside perspective. The day of the hearing arrived with heavy grey clouds threatening rain. Matteo dressed in his most formal suit, looking every inch the powerful boss he was. Sandra wore a simple black dress, elegant and understated. She wasn't speaking at the hearing, but she'd be there as a show of support. The council met in a neutral location, an old estate outside the city that had served as meeting grounds for decades. Security was tight, weapons checked at the door, tensions running high. Sandra could feel eyes on them as they entered, some curious, some hostile. The hearing room was set up like a courtroom, with the 5 council members seated at an elevated table. Alexei Volkov's brother, Dmitry, was already there with his legal team, looking smug and confident. Matteo Luis, the head councilman, intoned. You stand accused of violating sacred combat protocols and dishonouring the Volkov family name. How do you plead? Innocent, Matteo said clearly. And I request the right to present evidence in my defense. The hearing proceeded with formal precision. Dimitri's team went first, presenting their case that Matteo had somehow orchestrated the knife incident to justify excessive force, that he'd planned all along to humiliate and destroy Alexei Volkov. Sandra watched Matteo remain perfectly calm throughout the accusations, his face giving nothing away. When it was his turn to speak, he stood with natural authority. Respected council members, he began, his voice carrying through the room. The accusations against me are based on false premises. My fight with Alexei Volkov was conducted according to traditional rules. When he chose to violate those rules by introducing a weapon, he invalidated his own claim to honor. I responded appropriately to neutralize the threat. Multiple witnesses from both sides can confirm this sequence of events. He proceeded methodically through his defense, calling witnesses, presenting video footage from security cameras that clearly showed Alexei pulling the knife first. It was damning evidence, and Sandra could see several council members shifting uncomfortably. When Matteo finished, there was a long silence. Then Viktor Kozlov leaned forward. Mr. Luis, your evidence is compelling. But the Volkov family claims you've been engaging in territorial expansion that violates existing agreements. They suggest this entire incident was manufactured to justify aggressive action. This was the moment they'd prepared for. Matteo didn't miss a beat. If we're discussing territorial concerns, perhaps the council should examine the Volkov family's recent activities along your borders, Councilman Kozlov. I have documentation showing unauthorized expansions that directly impact your holdings. Sandra suppressed a smile as Matteo produced the evidence she'd helped him compile. Kozlov's expression shifted from skeptical to very interested. I wasn't aware of these incursions, Kozlov said slowly, examining the documents. Because they've been subtle, Matteo said. But systematic. The Volkov family has been playing a long game, gentlemen. My conflict with Alexei exposed their broader strategy. Supporting their claim here would only embolden further violations. The dynamic in the room shifted perceptibly. What had been a hearing about Matteo's actions became a conversation about Volkov family overreach. Dimitri tried to recover, but the damage was done. After 2 more hours of deliberation, the council returned with their verdict. Matteo Luis is cleared of all charges, the head councilman announced. The fight was conducted within acceptable parameters. Furthermore, the council will be conducting a full review of Volkov family territorial claims. This hearing is adjourned. Sandra felt relief wash through her so intensely she nearly swayed on her feet. Matteo's hand found hers as they stood, squeezing once in triumph before letting go to maintain professional appearances. Outside, away from the council building, Matteo finally let his guard down, pulling Sandra into a fierce hug. We did it, he said against her hair. You did it. That research on Kozlov's borders was the turning point. We make a good team, Sandra said, smiling up at him. The best, Matteo agreed. In the car ride home, Carlos was practically gleeful. Did you see Dimitri's face when Kozlov started questioning him? Priceless. Absolutely priceless. Don't celebrate too hard, Matteo cautioned. The Volkovs won't forget this. We've made a powerful enemy. But we've also made powerful allies, Sandra pointed out. Kozlov respected how you handled that. And the other council members saw you fight fairly, saw you present solid evidence. That counts for something. She's right, boss, Marco added from the front seat. Your reputation just got a major boost. People will think twice before coming after you now. That evening, back at the penthouse, Elena insisted on ordering champagne and Chinese food to celebrate. They sat around the living room like a normal family, laughing and recounting the day's events. I can't believe how calm you were, Elena said to Matteo. I would have been freaking out. Years of practice, Matteo said. My father used to say emotions are information, not instructions. You acknowledge them, then you act strategically anyway. Your father sounds like he was complicated, Sandra said carefully. She knew Matteo's relationship with his late father was fraught. He was brutal and effective, Matteo said. He taught me how to survive in this world. But he also taught me to be alone, to never trust, to see everyone as either an asset or a threat. He looked at Sandra, his expression softening. You've taught me different lessons. Better ones. Like what? Elena asked, leaning forward with interest. Like the value of partnership, Matteo said. Like how being vulnerable with the right person makes you stronger, not weaker. Like how love doesn't have to be a liability. Sandra felt her eyes sting with sudden tears. Even after months together, Matteo could still surprise her with his honesty, his willingness to be open about his feelings. Okay, now I'm going to cry, Elena said, fanning her face dramatically. You two are disgustingly perfect together. Hardly perfect, Sandra laughed. We argue about the thermostat constantly. Because you like living in an icebox, Matteo protested. It's freezing in here. It's comfortable, Sandra countered. You just run hot. See? Elena said, grinning. Even your arguments are cute. It's nauseating. They finished dinner and Elena retreated to her room to study, leaving Sandra and Matteo alone. They moved out to the balcony, standing close together as they looked out over the city lights. Today could have gone very differently, Sandra said quietly. Move in with me, Matteo said, then laughed at Sandra's confused expression. I mean officially. I know you're already living here, but make it permanent. I want everyone to know this is your home too. Our home. I thought that's what we were already doing, Sandra said. I want to make it official, Matteo insisted. I want your name on the deed. I want joint accounts. I want there to be no question that we're building this life together, as equals. Sandra felt overwhelmed by the gesture. In the cartel world, property and power were everything. For Matteo to offer to share that with her legally wasn't just romantic, it was revolutionary. Matteo, that's everything I want, he finished. Say yes, Sandra. Yes, she whispered. Always yes with you. 6 months after the hearing, life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Sandra was officially co-owner of the penthouse, her name added to dozens of important documents. She'd taken on a larger role in Matteo's business operations, her insights and strategic thinking proving invaluable. Elena had graduated from nursing school with honors and accepted a position at a prestigious hospital. She'd moved into her own apartment, one with state-of-the-art security that Matteo had insisted on, but she still came to dinner at the penthouse at least twice a week. The relationship between Sandra and Matteo deepened with each passing day. They learned each other's quirks and habits, the small intimacies that came with truly sharing a life. Matteo learned that Sandra liked to read medical journals before bed, finding them oddly soothing. Sandra learned that Matteo was secretly sentimental, keeping every card and note she'd ever given him in a locked drawer in his desk. They fought sometimes, usually about work-life balance and Sandra's tendency to overextend herself. But they always talked it through, always chose each other over pride or stubbornness. One evening in late autumn, Matteo came home to find Sandra cooking dinner, something she'd started doing more often. She was humming along to music, completely absorbed in whatever she was making. That smells amazing, Matteo said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. It's my mom's recipe, Sandra said, leaning back against him. I haven't made it in years, but I was thinking about her today, and I wanted to try. What made you think of her? Sandra turned in his arms, her expression thoughtful. Just, how much has changed? How different my life is now compared to what I imagined it would be. I wish she could have met you. You think she would have approved? Matteo asked gently. Eventually, Sandra said with a slight smile. After she got over the initial shock of the whole Mafia thing. But she always wanted me to find someone who would love me completely, who would be a true partner. You're that person, Matteo. I love you, he said simply. More than I thought I was capable of loving anyone. I love you too, Sandra replied. Even when you leave your suits all over the bedroom floor. Hey, you leave books everywhere, Matteo protested. Books are different. Books are sacred. They ate dinner together, talking about their days, making plans for the weekend. It was domestic and perfect and everything Sandra had never let herself hope for. After dinner, Matteo led her back out to the rooftop where he'd first asked her to move in. The string lights were on again, creating that magical canopy of stars. "Why do I feel like something's happening?" Sandra asked, her heart starting to race. "Because you know me too well," Matteo said. He took both her hands, his dark eyes intense on hers. "Sandra Mason, you walked into my life 2.5 years ago and changed everything. You've made me better, stronger, happier. You've taught me that loving someone isn't weakness, it's the greatest strength I've ever had." He dropped to one knee, and Sandra's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," Matteo continued. "I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to build an empire with you, raise a family with you, grow old with you. Sandra, will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a ring that took Sandra's breath away. A single diamond, flawless and brilliant, set in platinum with smaller stones flanking it. "Yes," Sandra said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Matteo slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and kissed her deeply, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. From somewhere below them, Sandra heard cheering and looked down to see Carlos, Marco, Elena, and what looked like half of Matteo's inner circle gathered on the terrace below, celebrating. "You told everyone?" Sandra asked, laughing through her tears. "I wanted witnesses," Matteo said. "Wanted everyone to know that you're mine and I'm yours, officially and forever." Elena ran up the stairs to the roof, throwing herself at both of them. "I knew it. I knew he was going to propose tonight. The ring is perfect, Sandra, absolutely perfect. You helped pick it out, didn't you?" Sandra accused fondly. "I might have given some input," Elena admitted with a grin. The rest of the evening was a blur of congratulations and celebration. Someone had prepared food and drinks, turning it into an impromptu engagement party. Sandra stood in Matteo's arms, surrounded by people who had become family, and felt a happiness so complete it almost scared her. "What are you thinking?" Matteo murmured in her ear as the party continued around them. "That I hid in your closet crying 7 months ago, and now I'm here, engaged to you, happy beyond measure. Life is strange and beautiful and terrifying. The best things always are," Matteo said. "And we're just getting started." 3 months later, they married in a private ceremony on a beach in Mexico, just family and close friends. Elena cried through the entire ceremony. Carlos gave a toast that was somehow both sentimental and hilarious. And when Matteo kissed his bride, Sandra felt like everything in her life had finally clicked into perfect place. Their honeymoon was 2 weeks in Italy, exploring ancient cities and eating incredible food and not thinking about business or danger or anything except each other. When they returned, tanned and happy and completely in love, real life was waiting. But it was a life they'd chosen together, built together. And whatever challenges came next, they'd face them the same way they'd faced everything else, side by side, stronger together than either could ever be alone. As Sandra sat in Matteo's office months later, working through quarterly reports while he handled a conference call, she thought back to that day in the closet. The worst moment of her life had led to the best thing that ever happened to her. Sometimes the most dangerous man gives the safest love. Sometimes the secretary crying in the closet finds her happy ending with the mafia boss who refuses to let her face her battles alone. And sometimes, love really does conquer everything. If this story moved you, if you found yourself unable to look away, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me your favorite moment, and subscribe so you never miss another story like this. Share this with someone who needs to believe in unexpected love stories. Because sometimes, the best things in life come from the most impossible situations. And who knows? Maybe your own impossible love story is just around the corner.